So last week I thought it was a good idea that we did one after work instead of earlier on in the day. Energy levels sort of go up and down through the day, don't they? But we did get to have a beer this time. So I've got beers again. I do have to warn you though, we raided the fridge for the beers and I found some from a speaker event that we did a little while ago maybe, that were at the back of the cupboard. And these ones have got Euro 2020 written on them.
So if this is the final podcast...
So I might be poisoning you. So on mine, I've got Euro 2020, North Macedonia. Did very well famously in Euro 2020. Who have you got?
I've got Ukraine. So
Oh, it could be a collector's item.
there we go.
Yeah, like that.
Not sure how they did in Euro 2020. 2021, wasn't it?
It was.
COVID.
Yeah.
Whatever.
So this, you'll be pleased to know, does finish up our stock of Euro 2020 brand.
I think there might be one left. We'll have to have competition, see who gets it.
Well, we could ask listeners to answer a competition question, and they get sent. We'll have to see what countries are.
Yes.
Good.
What a price.
And out of date bottle of Heineken. Good. Well, that should bode well for a very entertaining podcast this evening. Should we get going?
Absolutely.
Okay, good evening, everybody. You're listening to the SME Growth Podcast, and I'm Dave Parry from Wellmeadow, and I'm joined as ever by the illustrious Richard Buckle.
Good evening.
Good evening to you. This week, we're going to do another one on that theme of marketing for different types of things. And a few weeks ago, we did marketing of a place instead of a product or a service. So we thought that this week we'd do another angle again, and this time it's a twist on marketing a company, but to a different audience. And instead of its customers and potential customers, it's more internal audience. So mainly it's employees and other stakeholders. So we've called this one internal marketing.
Internal marketing. And it's something I think we're seeing a bit more interest in, I think, aren't we? As
I think we have to do, and you can see why, really.
Yeah.
I mean, and I suppose let's back up a little bit. Why do you bother with internal marketing? And sometimes it's just thought to be a good thing to do, and one of those things. But I think more and more it's got a real business case for doing this now. We know that there's 1.3 million vacancies in the UK, 3.5 million people missing from the workforce as a combination of all sorts of things. And we know there's increased churn as people are moving around with cost of living, and some companies are doing higher rises than others. So it's harder and harder to both attract and retain the right quality of staff. And I'm not saying, no one's saying this is going to fix everything, but if you haven't got your internal comms right, as they would have called it, and you don't put as much effort in making your employees as proud of the company as the customers sometimes are, then you're going to be missing a trick.
And that's something we've seen before, isn't it? Is that sometimes the customers actually know more about what's going on.
More than sometimes, I think.
The employees.
Yeah, I think we spend a lot of effort. We collectively, we do, and our clients do, spend a lot of time talking to their market about how well they're doing and what their key products are and strengths. And it's surprising, maybe not, shouldn't be surprising, but you go and speak to some of the people who are adding that value and they don't see the big picture. They don't know which particular end product their component goes into or what their service is ultimately delivering. So.
And I think that's something important, isn't it? I think it depends on obviously where you sit in the business, but the more towards the leadership end that you're sitting, the more this probably is a bit more of your day to day, and you're seeing these issues come up, and sometimes it can be quite easy to take that for granted.
I think that's one of the big bear traps in all of this, that if you personally are familiar with the state of the company, some recent business wins and some good stuff, some great new product development, you just presume, erroneously probably, that everybody else knows it as well. And yet you're in a privileged position. You're getting to know that, whereas others don't know.
So it can be good to, I suppose, put yourself in the shoes of the people who perhaps haven't got that access to that information, and just think, well, what would I want to know?
Well, how easy is that? You just go to the coalface, go to one of the big offices in your department or down on the shop floor if it's manufacturing, and just ask people, do you know much about such and such? And if you get a bit of a blank stare or a quizzical look, then there's a great piece of content to talk a bit more about.
And it's a slightly different angle as well, isn't it, compared to external focus marketing?
Oh, for sure, yeah. I mean, but it's not completely different, is it?
There's
a lot of overlap.
There's a bit of a Venn diagram.
Yeah, a Venn diagram, like that.
Of customers, internal people, and
the other bit
in the middle.
Yes.
So you get the idea. It's like a Venn diagram, but sort of.
There's an overlap in the middle somewhere.
There's some overlap, yeah. That would have been easier.
Well, and it's right, because if the business wins an award, it's usually shouting about that in its external marketing. Why not internally as well? Yeah. If it's won a big new customer, developed a new product, going to an exhibition show type thing, whatever, that type of stuff tends to be sent out externally and would be appropriate internally. But there's got to be stuff that is more appropriate or only appropriate internally that you wouldn't prefer to send out, maybe even beyond that wouldn't want to get out. That's a bit of a challenge then, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think what sort of things would you
well, you certainly want to steer away from financial information that might be market sensitive. Yeah. If you've got a problem with a supplier, for example, you probably wouldn't want to put that in writing. Maybe everybody internally knows that you've got a problem with that supplier, but you wouldn't want that to go out and brandish it. You've got some anti-competitive matters you've got to be careful of. Certainly if one of your customers has developed a new product, you can't shout too much about that in an attributable way, even though internally it may be easier to understand it because they see the various competitor products. But you've got to be really careful not to write stuff down or whatever other format you're using that could then leak out. So I think there is, and maybe that's one of the barriers why this doesn't get done too much. There's a few others, but one of them is the fear that whatever we say intended for an internal audience doesn't necessarily stay for that internal audience and can get leaked.
Do you think it takes more time to do this internally than?
I think it does, and I think there's a compounding problem. So I think you're right, it does just take more time anyway, and that's possibly because we're just more used to the idea of producing messaging for customers and markets, and it's something we're more familiar with. And you've got, I think employees in businesses are quite a demanding audience, to get their attention span, to get them to read a newsletter, read a notice board, watch a video, you've got to be adding real value. You don't just want to give the impression that this is corporate speak and it's just management but at arm's length, so it's difficult to do for that reason. But I think the compounding problem is whether or not value is seen in doing it. So not only is it probably more input time per piece of output than a piece of external marketing, but because you don't see an order coming in on the back of it or some leads or eyeballs, then that benefit we talked about of recruitment and retention, it's a bit intangible, isn't it?
Intangible, long-term strategy as well, isn't it? That's really, you're trying to, I suppose there's a big piece of it around alignment of maybe goals and values as well. It doesn't, does it become it's a bit of a fine balance between it becoming a toolbox talk or a management seminar versus.
It'd be easy to write it off as propaganda as well, wouldn't it? So here they go again. It's got to be really useful, interesting stuff. Like we said in the opening, that senior people in the business will have more awareness of what's going on, and not everybody else will have. So at the very least, do the common decent thing and tell everybody. Yeah,
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Thinking about it from a buyer persona perspective. How many companies have it's not quite a buyer persona, but a persona even for
it's certainly a persona, isn't it?
For their internal,
they're consuming the information. You've got to write it with somebody in mind. You shouldn't be writing in a vacuum. You've got to write with who is it that you're talking to, writing for. So yes, there is that, and there'll be a number of different ones. If you were to do this really well, you'll have the evangelist, advocate types, just like you do with buyers that will promote the company till the end of the earth, and you'd have the cynics and those that maybe are sowing the seeds of discontent and looking to leave or rabble rousing, and the vast majority in between those two somewhere. Are carrying on, having faith in the fact that the company's doing the right things, but not really having any evidence of that, and just trusting their managers and leaders. So yes, it's quite a complex area, this. Not to mention around the GDPR, and depending what you're putting out, but we'll come to some various different formats later on. But imagine if you just mentioned someone's birthday, that you've got to be careful these days. Right? That's a piece of personal information that can be used for identity theft and that sort of thing. So you've got to have permissions, even photos.
Photos,
videos. We've come across this before, haven't we?
Yeah.
Not everybody wants their photo public. I mean, these days lots of people are on LinkedIn, but some people aren't, and if they're on there, they maybe don't use their photos. So you just got to be really, really careful.
Yeah. It's I'm just remembering back when we tried to do the photo thing, and that was a big
Well, we were trying to put photos on the footers of emails, weren't we?
Yeah.
Which we do in our company. It's a great effect, actually. I think we've had great feedback from that. And it's nice when you then, I mean, these days, perhaps with Teams and Zoom calls, we tend to see each other a bit more. But it's nice just even when you open an email to have that human connection. There's the person that I've just received this from. You see their face. Yeah. It's much more friendly, isn't it? And you feel you can relate to them. And you don't maybe want to send off one of those tirade emails because you see there's a person at the other end of it. It's not just this faceless thing, literally.
So I think it's what we could say. You can repurpose some of your marketing content, external marketing content, for internal uses, can't you?
You can, yeah.
We've done that in various places for people where we've produced content for them, and we've actually thought, you know what, like we need to put this out to the people who are actually making these parts or helping produce this service, or it's let them see some of this content because it helps them to align with where the business is going.
And you can get incredibly proud about, lots of companies do, and most companies do incredible value adding things. But if you get too disconnected from that, then it's harder to draw that link and feel the same degree of pride. But there's that other effect, and you've experienced this recently. You were telling me about it. When you go into a workplace with a camera or microphone, and it changes the atmosphere immediately. There's a real buzz about the place.
Yeah, well, I suppose it's you obviously get those people that love being in front of a camera, and they will want to perform a bit. That's fine. And some people run away, and again, that's fine. Everyone's different, so I think what we've really found is when we've used a piece of content and it's gone into a business presentation, or it's gone to a customer or something, and then when that feedback comes back to people on the shop floor who have been in that, all of a sudden there's this connection between them, the customers, the work they're doing, which is it's really great to see. Yeah. And it's often something that I think is overlooked. Again, if you're in the sales or marketing department, you're seeing customers, you're hearing that feedback. It doesn't often get filtered back down. And we've got a client where the sales marketing director took the presentation down that was going to some really big customers onto the shop floor and showed everyone on there, this is what it is. And it was amazing. Like, oh, look, there we are, and there we are.
We make that bit. That's what it goes into, and see that.
So whilst it was aimed at external marketing, actually, there was a huge benefit in terms of actually involving and just showing people that actually are doing the work. Yeah.
And of course, if you're doing this more, you'll be grabbing a better library of stock images, let's call it that, of actual real people doing actual real work. There's a real danger that marketing departments have a couple of stock images that they use for internal people making a part or working in office or shaking someone's hand or whatever, and they overuse that. And in fact, you may have an awful lot more employees, and the more you're doing activities like this, you'll be picking up images that you can rotate around. And I remember we put the face of one of the employees on the front of an ebook that we sent out. That was quite well received, and we even printed a few, actually. Digital printing these days, very easy to just print half a dozen, and we had those scattered around, and it's amazing the impact it has on that employee. But of course, digital printing, you can do 10 of those, change the image on the front, print another 10 with somebody else's face on the front, and everybody gets a turn.
And even if depending on what type of content you're producing, again, we've done things where you invite people in to come and be part of the videos or come and be part of the whatever it is that you're making, and just again, it's customer facing marketing, but there's an intangible, or perhaps actually quite tangible, element of involving people who aren't typically involved in the marketing activities, and that in and of itself, then people start talking about it. And it doesn't half make your job easier as a marketer, or even for HR as well, if you can really engage people to be involved in.
Well, I know a business owner who says when you ask him how big is his marketing department, he said, everybody is in marketing in my company. Yeah. I need everybody to know what it is that we do, how do we add value, who our customers are, and when we're out in the field, and his business happens to be out and about delivering more so than behind closed doors, he said everybody needs to be able to say the same message. We're all in marketing for that reason. So you need to make sure that people have got a consistent message if you're going to rely on them doing that.
Yeah. So, I mean, other things that we we've seen before and done things like day in the life of videos or staff stories, those types of things.
Yeah, the staff stories series that we did recently, I think that's gone down very well, hasn't it?
Doing well.
Very well promoted on LinkedIn and lots of click-throughs to the website. And of course, you get double whammy out of that. You get the employees seeing both themselves and their close colleagues on it, and that's good to circulate around. You get, in a larger firm especially, people seeing other people in their own company that they've never even met before, and maybe that emboldens them to go up to them in the corridor or in the cafe and just say hello, and that's good. But then you've got all those potential recruits and people looking for jobs, and that was kind of the purpose of doing it, wasn't it? To help with the recruitment efforts. And they see people being very genuine about what they like about the company. You can't force someone to look genuine, can you really? No one's that good an actor to say, yes, I like working here and I've been told to say this. If you see it in the eyes that they really want to come to work and they're passionate about it, you can tell. And that comes across.
And I think as well, what was good about that, oftentimes when you're making videos in a corporate or company environment, it's the senior leadership team, the directors, the board that are the ones doing the talking. And with this, it was very much like, not that we don't want to hear from leadership, but actually we need to give some space to people who
different voices,
doing different things in the company, and you get a much bigger perspective. And people think, okay, we're being listened to. We're able to tell our story, and again, not everybody wants to do it, but to have that opportunity means that it was good for external marketing, but also now we can use it for things like onboarding. New employees,
loads of different uses for it. I just want to pick up the way you said not everybody wants to do it, which is of course true. It's not everybody's cup of tea. But when you've done a few, I think you find a few of the people that were in the not quite sure camp then are emboldened to give it a go, because they've seen that it's reasonably safe environment to do it. You get a chance to retake things, and it's only going to present you in the best light. That's everybody's purpose, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of it's a journey, isn't it? And I think that to go back to the example you just mentioned, who I think I know who you're talking about when you said everyone's in marketing. But if I'm right in who I think that is, that particular company has done a lot of marketing, and they involve a lot of people over a number of years, haven't they?
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
So it's not kind of one day the MD wakes up and says, right, we're all going to get into marketing today.
No, that's definitely woven through the fabric of the organisation.
It's part of the recruitment process. It's part of just the culture of the business. And so I think if that's not your culture at the moment, you can't expect
don't fake it.
Don't fake it. Don't listen to a podcast and then think we've got to do this tomorrow.
No.
But by all means, think this could be a 12-month, 24-month.
But even if you don't believe that all of your employees are going to be in a position to present the company in its best light, because maybe the nature of the work or whatever, that doesn't take away still this need for internal marketing in its broader sense, because of all the other uses of it. So we've talked there a little bit about leveraging the proper market, the external marketing, if you like. But we've also mentioned recruitment and retention. And that's another thing that we've been doing recently, specifically around recruitment, not just the day in the life of, but by the time this podcast goes out, you'll be on LinkedIn looking at it. And we've done a couple of variations of a recruitment video.
Yeah. And we've, we could just put an advert out, which we may well do as well.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But one of the ways that we wanted to do is to actually show what it's like to work in the company, try and get across some of our values, try and get across a bit of a feel for the type of thing that we're doing. So what better way to do that than make a video?
Well, you're almost meeting some of your potential colleagues before you apply. We all get that sense, don't we, of do I think I'm going to fit in there? Am I going to enjoy that?
Which in and of itself is a great filter, right?
It is, yeah. It's a two-way process. The selection process is two ways, isn't it? We need to make sure that people who do apply to us actually still feel they want to come here. And this isn't a new idea. We've been doing something along these lines for quite a while, although in the early days that presentation from the business owner, and we've helped a lot of clients do this, was more in written form. And we used to come up with a very sort of warts and all heartfelt introductory email, thanks for applying type thing. Then we moved into a video of those, but they were pretty deadpan, face to camera. Yeah. This is the company, this is the role, thanks for applying type thing. And we've just taken it up another level now, where you're getting more employees to talk about what it's like here, you're showing a bit more of the office environment, and you're talking about even the town that our office is in. Why we're proud of that.
And we managed to get some incredibly handsome actor to come in and do some amazing Oscar-winning performances.
Viewers will judge for themselves on this.
So you just have to watch and see who that is.
Is there a BAFTA equivalent for cheesy recruitment videos? I wonder what the award will be called instead of an Oscar. You can have a buckle.
Anyway,
plastic statue.
About that.
So let's just round up. There's a few other things that internal marketing is used for. We've talked about recruitment. We've talked about making sure everybody's on message with the vision and values and culture, and generally aware of what's going on product-wise and all that.
Yep.
But there are some other quite practical uses that don't often get considered in terms of something from the marketing department. You've mentioned onboarding very briefly. So new starters often get a bit of a show around, but you won't see everything being made every day. And, that's a good way of bolstering that sort of thing. Health and safety, you do see that fairly often in larger firms. You have to watch the health and safety video, but flipping heck, are they often done as dry as you can imagine. You can probably do those in a more engaging way and get people to actually remember some of the content if you were to think about doing that. Lots of companies have their company presentation, which they give, normally the ubiquitous PowerPoint and fairly boring, bit too much text and the awards here and there. You can do a video version of that much more effectively, maybe a bit of a tour, maybe even some clips from customers and that sort of thing. And I think PR as well, if we're talking internal, now don't forget, the good news stuff that happens often doesn't travel as fast as the bad news. So you have to make a bit more of an effort. So when there's a good business win, or you get a great bit of feedback, or maybe one of the sales guys has been on going to see a customer overseas, or just someone new, then there's always a couple of sound bites they can come back. So feed all that back in as well. Also great uses for internal marketing.
I think there's two things just adding to that. One is to think about, with any of those things, think about how your employees are going to consume content it's in their personal time. So if people are, watching YouTube shorts or TikTok or whatever, just it's worth bearing that in mind. I'm not saying cut your health and safety video down to 8 seconds, but think about how they're going to actually engage with it, remember it, those types of things. I think that's quite important. And also just around the PR point there, it's worthwhile thinking about how you have a system to try and either diarise it, systemize these things so that they do actually happen. I think you can.
Well, it goes back to where we started. This is hard to do,
yeah,
and it's the easiest thing to drop off the radar when everybody gets busy.
Yeah.
And especially of the more senior people. And this doesn't work unless you've got the input from senior people as well. Not exclusively, like you say. You want just a bit of a top and tail or a key message and then let other people have their voice. But if it's done entirely without the senior people in an organisation, then it can come across as very fake.
Got to have some leadership in it.
Yeah. And I'm tempted to draw, and I'm not sure how well this parallel works, but the old-fashioned company newsletter as a start point, because that's probably where some of our more traditional audience members might pigeonhole this idea of internal comms or internal marketing. And I don't know how many companies have managed to stick at doing a newsletter for long enough and still have it read. But it was very hard to do. It's very hard to fill those column inches with interesting stuff. But the content that used to go in them is still the right type of content. So a bit of business news for sure, maybe a spotlight on an employee, maybe some social stuff, what's going on in the company, social things, maybe some vacancies, promotions, retirals, someone's getting married, that sort of thing, maybe a classified ads section. All that's good stuff. It gels a body of people that work for a place and make them feel a bit more of a belonging. And that's a thing, which is what newsletters tried to do. But they were just, generally speaking, as dull as ditch water. Very hard to do in the written form.
Yeah.
And yet now, as we've been talking earlier in another of these podcasts, you can do a podcast in the company. You could do a video. Why not have a podcast in your company? A 15-minute, almost like radio show summary of what's happened this week or this month. Or it doesn't have to have everybody listen to it all the time, but a much more accessible form of getting that information out there. A lot of people are driving to work in the car, and if it's 15, 20 minutes, you can listen to that once a week, once a fortnight, get the headlines. Might just encourage them to go and ask somebody for some more information.
Yeah, there's other things. I mean, we were looking recently at, there's a product called Moby Mag. I'm sure there's other ones out there that do a similar type of thing, but it's a much more, what's like like magazine style, phone-based publication. It's not quite a newsletter, but I mean, you can
better than a browser. And it's better than PDF. It's it's mobile. It's designed for mobile.
Mobile. You can include video in it. You can, and the nice thing about that again is, I suppose, a bit unlike the traditional newsletter that would be put in your payslip or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Showing our age there.
Back when they had payslips.
Back when they had payslips. You can just track the data on it. What kind of engagement are we getting? Is it which bits of content work? Is it
and control some of the distribution on that. Obviously, people can still take screenshots, but the use of the whole app can be limited to people with registered accounts and that type of thing.
So there's lots of different ways of doing this, and then I suppose you've got things like signage and posters and
it's got just even the photos that go on the wall. How many businesses you've been into where reception has got the same ISO 9000 poster and quality statement and a photo of some younger employee or same employees when they were a lot younger, and they don't get changed because the people in a business get used to them. They're blind to them, don't they?
Yeah.
Whereas the newcomer sees them for the first time. So it's a whole number of aspects around that.
Yeah.
Interesting subject. It's not without its pitfalls, and it's hard to do. But I can't help thinking that in this more competitive environment for employees, recruitment and retention, like we've talked about, and leveraging the marketing across everybody, there's some strong arguments here for taking this area more seriously.
Well, I suppose it's just a slightly different return on investment calculation, isn't it? You're not measuring sales, but what the cost of recruitment is. Yeah,
reduced churn and easier recruitment. I think the problem will be for lots of marketing departments that they're expected to add this on just while you're there. And not enough credit is given for the fact that this is almost like another marketing
whose
department.
Responsibility is it? Is it HR or is it marketing? Or is it?
Well, the responsibility is probably not where the skills lie. And that's the problem, isn't it? Because clearly for external marketing, the skills lie in the marketing department and the sales department, and that's where the skills and the responsibility and the skills are in the same place. But like you say, maybe managers generally, HR facilitating that, are more responsible for recruitment and retention, but they need the services of the communications specialists, or they need to recruit their own. That's not common.
Yeah, and you'd probably need a reasonable sized HR team for this to bubble up to the top
and I
of the
think
list.
That's what we're highlighting here. This should be done even in smaller firms, but won't be because they haven't got the resource. And clearly, you can go to your external marketing agency to get help, but the chances are any limited resource will be focused on something that gets orders in because they can see a clearer payback. But these days, there's a clearer payback from improved recruitment and retention as well, just because of the environment we're in.
Yeah. And it's I suppose it's one of those, like we said before, maybe touched on, it's not necessarily easy. It sounds easy, but it's
easy to do it badly.
Yeah.
Which is why often they don't last long if they're not done very well.
Yeah.
Well, it's good insight to it. I think I quite enjoy thinking about these other things to spend time on marketing, like we did that one on a place, as well as, we talked about services and products. So just another angle for people to consider. Maybe that'll prompt a discussion inside your company if you're listening to this, and get the HR people to talk to the marketing people and see if it's a board topic worth discussing.
Yeah.
Good. Great. Well, thanks again for listening. That was the SME Growth Podcast from Wellmeadow. Please follow and like and subscribe to our podcasts wherever you get them from. But more importantly, tell your business friends and colleagues that we're here and that we're worth a listen. In the meantime, good luck with your business, and hopefully you'll listen to our podcast next week. Bye now.